In this video, I'll be sharing with you the sewing part of our previous tutorial of how to sew an inbuilt corset dress with a structured sleeve. So if this is something you like, please kindly hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up. Now, if you haven't yet seen the drafting tutorial of this dress, you can go ahead to check it out in our previous tutorial where we drafted it. So without much wasting time, let's dive right into today's video. So here is my pattern, and I'll use this pattern to cut out my dress. After that, I will have to tape it up, which I'll go ahead to use it and cut out my lining. I want to cut out my lining in one piece, then go ahead to join my patterns together, right? I also went ahead to tape up the yoke at the upper part. Now I've gone ahead to cut out my pattern on the fabric. The main fabric I'm using for my base, I ironed a stay on it, and I'll be joining this with 1/2 inch. Now let's work on the cup part of this corset. Now on the cup part, I added 1/2 inch round my cup. Now what I'm going to do is to go ahead to open up this cup. And for the cup, I'm using a thick wadding. I'm not using an already made cup. If you're using a bra cup, you're using an already made bra cup, all you have to do is join your pattern. Then after you're done joining your pattern, you now attach your cup. So I'm just going ahead to open up my cup. This is the part going to the sides, and this is the part going towards the center of this cup. Now I'll go ahead to place my wadding on it this way and place the other side on it also. Now after placing, I'll go ahead to iron and join with 1/2 inch. So whatever I do here, I'll also repeat it on the lining piece of my dress. So now after joining, this is what I have, and I went ahead to iron it out. Now I'll go ahead and be marking the areas that I want to sew my bonings on. So we have about 4 bonings by the side. Sorry, we have about 4 boning channels by the side of this pattern, right? But I'll be making 3 for my own, and then 3 on the other side and 1 at the center. So after marking this, now what I'll do is to go ahead to measure the distance I have from this center point to the other part. I'll mark, then measure what I have on the other one, because I want to repeat exactly what I have on the other side. So from here, I'll measure from the center to where I have the next boning line, and I'll also go ahead to mark that. Please, sorry for the noise at the background, it is actually my neighbors. So now I'll just go ahead to take this all the way up. Now after marking this, I'll go ahead to start creating my boning channels for this, and I'll go ahead to remark all this on this other side. After I'm done marking, I went ahead to cut out the fabric that I'll be using for the boning channel. So I have about 1.5 inches. I'll stitch down with 1/2 inch, then fold in the other 1/2 inch on it, and I will top stitch on it this way. So I'll also repeat this at the other side, stitch with 1/2 inch, fold it with 1/2 inch, and go ahead to stitch. Now this totally depends on the size of boning you're using. Now let's move over to the cup. I'm using a wadding, so I don't want my cup to be bulky. What I will do is to go ahead to open up this part, and I will trim out the wadding. I'm trimming out the wadding, not the material on the cup. That is, I will remove the part I ironed together with the fabric, and I'll cut this out. So if you're using an already made cup for your pattern, you don't have to do all this. All you have to do is to iron and stay to it. Now I'm placing my hemming gum, and I want to iron this open, right, so that it will relax very well on my cup. I'll go ahead to place it, and I'll iron it out. So I'll be doing the rest of this off the camera because it took me time actually to iron. So I also notched the cup. So just the same way I'm ironing this part, I'll also iron the other side of my cup. So I'll flip my cup this way, and I will now start ironing again. So I'll continue ironing till I get what is okay for me. Now I'm done with the boning lines. This is what I have, and I'm going to attach my cup. So remember what I'm doing to this fabric, I'm also doing it to the lining part. So I'll place the midpoint of this cup on the midpoint, that part that I joined on my cup. Now I'll start pinning my cup to the body of the corset. Now when you pin and you notice that the space you left for the cup is not enough for the cup, what you do is to go ahead to notch your cup, right? So you can see me notching the body of my corset. I'll go ahead to notch that space I left, which I'll go ahead to like pin my cup. If you notch it a little round, it will now be the size of your cup, and I'll go ahead to pin this down. So as I'm pinning this also, I'll also repeat the same process for the other side. Now after I'm done pinning, this is what I have, and I'll go ahead to attach it with 1/2 inch and also attach this side. Now I used my yoke to cut out this pattern. So at first I wanted to like make a turtle neckline, but I'm using a tulle net and it is very soft, so I had to like increase the depth of my neckline to that of 3 inches, and I'm making a basic neckline yoke. So what I'm going to do now is to go ahead to attach my yoke to the corset. So what I did was to place an IO pin. So I'm just going to go ahead to pin this all the way to the neckline. So I'll stitch this first to my cup before I'll turn it up with my lining. So sorry, this video is a little too fast. It's about 2 hours video, so I had to like make it a little fast to reduce the duration of the video. So I'll go ahead to stitch with 1/2 inch, and after I was done stitching, this is what I have for my corset. Now I'm just going to go ahead to place the lining. So for the lining part, I ironed a gum stay to the lining. So I'll just go ahead to find the center of my corset, place the lining on it. So I'll start stitching from there. So the neckline is not so deep, so it's not difficult to like join. Unless you're making a deep neckline corset, I will advise you to like slit the center and join the yoke together. So what I'll do now is to go ahead to pin. So after I'm done pinning towards the side, I'll go ahead also to pin the other side, and first I'll go ahead to stitch the neckline. Now when I'm stitching the neckline, I'll go ahead and stitch on that first line that I use in joining the yoke to the main fabric. So I also added a hemming gum to that part, so that when I iron my cup, that is, I added a hemming gum at the neckline of the dress, so that when I iron my corset, it will sit very well. So now what I will do is place the side, and I will stitch it with 1/2 inch and also stitch the other side with 1/2 inch. Now after I'm done stitching this, we'll be moving over to the back pattern to join the back. First I will go ahead to notch the side to make sure it relaxed very well, and I will also notch the upper part of this corset, that is the neckline also, and then pull it out, then go ahead to iron. So after turning this to the right side, this is what I had, and I'll just go ahead to iron it very well. So now be working on the back pattern. So I went ahead to cut out the yoke. So for the yoke part of this dress, I added 1/2 inch at the neckline in front and all the way around it. So this is it. I added 1/2 inch round, and I cut out the main fabric, ironed a stay on it, and on the lining I ironed PEPLUM stay. So I'll just go ahead to separate each part this way, and I'll place it on it. So I'll now go ahead to like add those little loops that I made for that of the back. So next I went ahead to turn out the yoke of this dress, and I'll cut out the excess that I have round it, then turn it to the right side, and I'll also go ahead to iron it out. So what I'll do now is to join the yoke with main fabric of this dress. So I'll go ahead to take my pattern, notch where my yoke is supposed to start, place it on my pattern paper. So I also forgot to say that I added 1 inch for my sewing allowance, because when we drafted out this pattern, I didn't add a sewing allowance to it. So what I'll do now is to notch this part. So by the side of your pattern or your corset, please add 1 inch for your sewing allowance, right? Now I'll place this on this part and I'll go ahead to stitch it down. I'll go ahead to stitch this down with 1/2 inch, and I'm going to place the other side of the yoke on it. So after stitching, this is what I have. Now I'll go ahead to place the lining on it. After I'm done placing the lining, I will now go ahead to start stitching it. So I'll stitch with 1/2 inch here, then at the upper part I'll stitch with 1/2 inch and stitch with 1/2 inch at the side. Repeat this at the other side of the pattern also. Now after I'm done stitching, I'll turn it to the right side. So after stitching, I'll just go ahead and I will notch this round, then I'll flip this to the right side of the pattern. So I'll just go ahead to flip it to the right side. So this is what I have, and I ironed it out. So I'll go ahead to mark about 1/2 inch here. After marking this 1/2 inch all the way down, I'll mark another 1/2 inch. The first 1/2 inch is for adding my boning. The second one is for my eyelets, and I'll be marking the third line, which is for my boning again. This is to give structure to the back of the dress, right? So just like I said, you mark the first line, the second line, and the third line. So after that, I added another boning lines to the back. Now I'll also repeat it on the other side. Now what I'll do is to get the front and the back to join. Normally I'm supposed to flip the back shoulder to turn the front neckline, but I'll just place it and top stitch with 1/2 inch because the two net I'm using is very soft. So I don't want, in a case after stitching it will go ahead to tear off later. I'll just stitch it with 1/2 inch and then weave it out later. So I'll also repeat this on the other side of my neckline. So now this is what I have after joining. Now I'll be using a freehand method to cut out my sleeve, so I didn't bother showing it because it's a freehand method. So what I did was to notch the center of my sleeve, and I'll be joining it with 1/2 inch on both sides of my dress, and I'll also repeat it on the other side of my dress. Now after I'm done sewing, this is what I have. So I'll be joining the side. So remember we used 1 inch for the sewing allowance. What I will now do is, since we used 1/2 inch to turn up the side, I'll just join my corset pattern with 1/2 inch, and for the sleeve of this dress I added only 1/2 inch, and I'll just go ahead to stitch it out. But when I'm stitching for the sleeve, I'll stitch like 0.75 because the two net I'm using is a bit stretchy. So I'll just stitch out 0.75 instead of 1/2 inch. Then going to the body of the corset, I'll stitch out 1/2 inch because what I added earlier was just 1 inch to the corset. Now after I'm done stitching, this is what my dress looks like. Now I'll start passing the boning, the mouth of the boning. So it was difficult for me to I didn't have any. So when you're making yours, please tape it up or use a lighter to burn the mouth of the boning. So I'll just go ahead to pass boning all through my pattern. So I did most of it offline because it took me a lot of time. So I'll just go ahead to pass boning to all the boning channels I created on the dress, and then we'll now move to creating the eyelets and wrapping up the lower parts. So I cut out about 1.5 inches, which I'll go ahead to start stitching. So I'll open up the side. If you open it up, you have an excess. I'll just go ahead to cut it off. Go ahead to place that 1.5 inches I cut out. Now I'll sew 1/2 inch, sew it all the way round to the end. After that, I'll now pull the rest of the 1 inch remaining and fold with 1/2 inch at the front part of my pattern, and I will top stitch. So after I was done top stitching, this is what I had, and then we are now going to stitch up our skirt. So before stitching up our skirt, I went ahead to cut out this structured sleeve. I have about 8.5 by 5, so my fabric was remaining very little. I just had to make do with what I had, and because of time I was supposed to add a boning to it, but because of time I just had to like iron a peplum stay to the sleeve. So after I was done stitching, I had to like turn it up with the lining I cut out. I'll just go ahead and place this and top stitch it at the front, and then also top stitch it at the back of the dress. So now I went ahead to make my skirt. Just like I said, I was trying to meet up with time, so I just had to like turn my skirt with the lining, and I added the zipper. Now I'm going to go ahead to shape out my skirt. So when I was ironing, my dress actually got burnt. So now when we were making this dress, cutting out the skirt, I didn't actually snatch out the waistline, so we'll be doing it here. So from the waist, I marked my shoulder to waistline, and then marked my shoulder to knee and came up by 2 inches. So on the waistline, I used the waistline that we snatched, which is my waist is 28 minus 2, which is 26. So I divided 26 by 2, and what I had was 13 inches. So I placed and marked 13 inches for the waistline. So after I was done marking this, on the hip line, my hip is 40 divided by 2, I have 20. What I had here is about 22 inches. So I'm sharing 1 inch on both sides of the hip of my skirt. Like I'll mark 1 inch here, and then I'll place my tape and mark the remaining 20 inches, meaning I shared the sewing allowance 1 inch on both sides. Now from the knee line, I went in by 1.5 inches on both sides. So if you want your skirt to be very fitted, please use 2 inches. I just felt like this is an inbuilt corset. The upper part is already tight. I didn't want mine to be the skirt to be too fitted again, to enable me work very well. So I marked 1.5 inches starting from the knee line all the way going down. After marking this, I repeated this at the other side of my skirt also, and I went ahead to connect it all the way to the lower part. So after I was done marking, I realized I didn't mark this part, so I also went ahead to mark this and connect this down. I went ahead to stitch it down. So after I was done stitching, I had to like wear my dress and wear the skirt. So now you have to like pull your skirt on top this way, then zip it up. You might need help doing this, or you can use a mirror if you're good at it. I had to cut out the center, then create the Busk effect that you want. So the Busk we had there is not that deep, so I just cut out a little Busk. So I was finding it difficult to do because I was doing it by myself with just a mirror and the phone. So after cutting this, you now pleat it inside. Now you can decide to like fold it in and stitch it from inside, or use your hand needle and do a ladder stitch on it. So if you don't want to do that, you can use your pin to hold it down and then top stitch it. So I went to the sewing machine to top stitch that, and after I was done top stitching, this was the final look of my dress. And if you find this tutorial very interesting and educative, please kindly hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and also leave your comment at the comment section.